Right. So anyway, Zhenyu Huang is with us. He will be introduced by Alex Copeland of Indie Bio, who's been a very great supporter of our workshops. Without stealing your thunder, why don't you go ahead, Alex, and introduce Lypid.
Yeah, thanks, Howard. So, at so many food tech events, the conversation for the last few years has been all around protein, and there's a lot of obvious reasons it's a big challenge to produce enough for the planet sustainably. But when it comes to making products that people love, we know how much fat and flavor really matters. And over the years in Indie Bio, we've seen very few applicants who really solve this problem, I think, in a global way, and have a platform to do it across a wide range of products, whether plant-based, animal-based, or kind of anything in between. So when we met Zhenyu and his co-founder Michelle, our team was really excited right away because we know they're solving one of the kind of biggest challenges in the kind of food tech space. So yeah, in their time in Indie Bio, they've been prototyping like crazy and developing the platform. And with that, I won't take any more of his thunder and let him tell you about what they're building.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. I will just start probably. Yeah, so Lypid is making fat alternative. And so when we started, the question we keep asking ourselves is what's the gap between vegan meat vs like animal meat? And we kind of like try to find the answer going back to the real product. Like we look at the pecans and we find out that the ratio of protein to fat is actually 1:1. And also we look at the steak, that the protein and fat ratio is 1 to 0.3 to 0.7. And also, as like Matt just mentioned, they probably ate like 15% to 20% of fat into their current cheese product. So I mean, fat is actually a big part of our food that can play a lot on the taste and also texture and appearance. But obviously, if you look back at what we have today, we only have 4 kind of choice, basically in all kind of application that you can imagine that people are trying to create or trying to achieve. People usually just use canola oil, sunflower oil to coconut oil, and almost all of them are in liquid form and they have very different performance compared with animal fat, that no matter in meat products, cheese, like dairy products, or like seafood products. So that's kind of like the problem we see in the market right now. And it's very true if you look at the current landscape of alternative protein market, that almost all the companies are trying to play on proteins. They try to create different kind of protein for different applications, but almost none of them are trying to solve another big part, a big composition of a real product like fat itself. So there's some people trying there. I think there are some people trying to solve it, and there are only 4 of them, and they mainly focusing on cell culturing fat, but not doing like other approach like plant-based fat. And the reason is that for plant oils, it's in liquid form. So when people look at it, they see very differently compared with animal fat. But that's how we play in. So Lypid actually have the capability to play plant oils and to make them perform like animal fat. And we think it's really key for the whole industry. And the first reason is that it's accessible today. So if you look at the material cost that people are trying to do in cell culturing or fermentation, I mean, they have like 1,000 times or 100 times compared with like what we are doing today, like with using plant oils and to make them perform like animal fat. And I think that's a really big bottleneck for all kind of applications, that the first you have to wait for a long time to reach the market, like probably 3 to 5 years. And the second thing is, even though you can reach the market in 3 to 5 years, using cell culturing, especially using cell culturing, will probably provide a very high cost profile compared with like the plant-based ingredients or plant-based materials. So that's why we see our very unique position over here, that we actually can provide like the alternative fat today and with a reasonable cost that already like in our product line right now. And I won't say that we are competing with cell culturing or fermentation. I actually think that there is a very interesting hybrid mode over here. Like for example, for Matt, if you have a very expensive proteins or expensive like fat that you have, you just mix with our fat and what we create, and you can bring down the cost a lot, and at the same time maybe even provide a better performance in your product. So the product that we are creating is called Phyto Fat, and it's clean label, and you can see that like the whitish part that we mix with current plant-based meat, and we cook it in all different kind of products already, and we can tune its texture and tune its muting behavior to make it really like animal fat. And it's not made by like hydrogenated oil or like saturated fat. It's just mainly made by plant oils, and we add our secret ingredients, water into it to make it, to kind of like encapsulating it to make it performs like animal fat. So over here, we are redesigning fat in 3 different perspectives. The first one is texture, second one appearance, and the last one is flavor. And like the first 2 things, texture and muting behavior, they are actually highly relevant. So what we are building is to tune its texture for different end applications. So you can see that this product is actually mainly made by canola oil and olive oil, but it can perform really like animal fat that stand as like a solid, big chunk of solid over there that can be used in high fat products, for example, pork belly, bacons, or even marbling for like steak product. And the other version of it is that we talk with a bunch of different customers in alternative seafood and alternative chicken company. Like we kind of like develop like a semi-solid version of it that you can plate it into your product, and at the same time, people won't see a big chunk of fat. And this is like, we show that we can tune the texture and muting behavior with our toolkit and platform technology. And moreover that is that it's actually a very good way to deliver flavors. So what we have found out is that we can actually using our metric to encapsulating flavors, because one of the issue over here is that flavor like VOCs easily go away when people cook the plant-based product, or even they don't cook it, they just put it over there. All the flavoring compound just lost into the air. And we actually did a comparison, and we found out that our Phyto Fat is a very good way to encapsulating those flavors into your product. And also the other thing is that when we compare with coconut oil, you don't have a strong coconut flavor, which is not appealing in meat products. And also like we can hold proteins together that you don't need to add more additives like methylcellulose. That's another benefit, that when we made some alternative fat that really performs like animal fat, you don't need to add a bunch of different kind of additives into it to try to bind everything together. So over here, I'm showing you that we can tune the texture, appearance, and also flavors. And moreover, like at the same time, we actually make it a lot healthier. So we reduce the saturated fat compared with coconut oil, like we reduce 97% of saturated fat. And we also reduce the overall fat consumption over here, because that we are using water to replace oil like in our product. So this is very important, because that I also recall that in today's discussions, like the other company mentioned, or maybe in the panel, people like raise the questions over here that plant-based product is not healthy. Like if you think about it, people think about plant-based meat, they think it's healthier, so they buy it, but it's not true. Like even for today, like they add a bunch of saturated fat and sodium into their product to mimic like the beef product. And that's the next, I think that's the next thing that we have to think about it, that how do we really make alternative proteins products healthier than the animal products, or we'll probably lose like consumers' interest very quickly when they figure out that it's not healthier. Yeah, so Phyto Fat is a very good fit over here, that it can reduce the saturated fat and at the same time masking a lot of proteins flavors, so you don't need to add a bunch of sodium into it. So I would say that Phyto Fat is a very good platform that can be used to replace alternative fat for different end applications, from meat to seafood, and also even in dairy, that we actually have some trial on it. And like all of this are not done by myself. So like we have a pretty strong team over here. Like I did my PhD in chemical engineering and do a lot of scaffolding stuff before. And Michelle is actually the alternative fat expert. So she actually made a butter with 80% of water and only 20% of oil, which flips the total, like the overall composition. So she has like a pretty interesting technology that can use water to replace all kind of oil, and at the same time maintain the same texture and mouthfeel. So that's really key, like a very key invention. Like we think that we can totally change the market of like plant-based meat market. So I will quickly give a conclusion on what we are doing as a vital fat. That is a line of fat that made by natural vegan oils like sunflower oil, canola oil, and olive oil. And with using this kind of oil, we have the capability to make it performs like animals fat in terms of texture and muting behaviors. So we actually can make it stand above cooking temperature, above 130 degrees Celsius. And also it's a very good way to hold proteins together and deliver flavors that really extend the like your flavoring compounds in your product. And the last thing is it's just healthier. Like it's reduced saturated fat and at the same time also reduce the overall fat consumption. So we believe that this is a very good opportunity for plant-based meat product to kind of like moving into next level, to think more not on the two side. Like first is making tastier for meat eaters to change their habit. And second thing is really make it healthier for like people, when people buy it and eat it, they can really meet their original salt on or original filling on the plant-based food. Yeah. So that's what we are building, and I'm happy to take questions right now.
Hey, that's fantastic, fantastic presentation, Jenu. So I have a couple of questions just to kick it off. We have 5 minutes here. So first, I mean, what you describe is almost too good to be true. But let me ask you, I mean, how stable is your oil if you were to actually cook with it or bake with it? I mean, I'm trying to imagine water replacing oil. It just feels like, you know, if you were to heat it up, would it kind of disengage from the mix? And also, if you were to fry with it, I mean, doesn't water screw up the frying process? Tell us about the stability.
Yeah, so it's actually very stable. I actually had a video, and if people are interested in, I can show you in person. And I would say that we can stand when I say water, it's not only water. We definitely we are using an encapsulation technology to encapsulating all these things together. And so like just a quick short answer is that it can be stable above 130 degrees Celsius. So it's very high temperature. And we also actually put it into like an oven to bake it. And when we bake it, it actually did very like good job in looking like a cheese. So if Matt is still here, I think that's a very interesting like intersection over here, that when we using this, what we are creating is like highly similar to cheese. Probably that's a good way to combine things together. Yeah.
But would you use it for sautéing, for example, or for, I mean, like Crisco? I mean, you know Crisco, right? I mean, is it similar in functionality to Crisco?
I would say it's not there yet. So like the main composition in our product is still oil, but for like cheese or other dairy product, they have more proteins inside. So that's the interesting part, that I think that if we put more protein into it, then it becomes a cheese. And if we don't put that much of protein into it, that it becomes a fat for animal, like animal meat. Yeah.
Right.
So that's the interesting part.
Okay, very cool. And last question for me, before we see if the audience has any questions. So it sounds like you have a very valuable trade secret or maybe patented process, but what can you tell us, even though it's top secret, what can you tell us about how it's made, just so that people can believe it's not just magic?
Yeah, sure. So it's basically an emotion based encapsulation technology that we are using emotion, like to put oil and water together, and physically and chemically. So we use all kind of approach to stabilize them and to encapsulate in it to make it really performs like animal fat. So yeah. So in like a very broad terms, we're using emotion based technology. Yeah.